Hi guys, another engineer picked this up on a Friday afternoon, late Friday, and knowing the customer was quite urgent to get it back, it'd been faulty for a few days waiting for a part to arrive. I thought I'd pop in on the Saturday to have a go at it. Now I was carrying a bit of a nasty bug at the time, so I've gone over with a voiceover on it. I'll be honest, I wasn't going to upload the video to YouTube, as I made a bit of a mess of the whole video, and I took ages on the job, to be honest, basically because I've never actually done this job before, but I have shortened it the best I can do. So I started with taking the covers off. So I took the rear cover off, and then what's next is the side covers. So it's a couple of screws and mostly clips. You can see there I'm taking the cover off on the right hand side there from the front. It comes off pretty easy, to be fair. Same on the other side, just a couple of screws and just remove the side cover. You have to take both side covers off to get the cover off underneath the scanner unit, which you can see the whole scanner which houses the document feeder is lifted at the moment. So just popping that side cover off now. A couple of clips, wiggles off, and then a few screws on the top there. Now this machine's a 579R. It's actually very similar to a C5790, but it's also shares a lot of common parts with the mono version, which is a 5799 and M5799, and also on the newer model, the C5890, which is a facelift model to the 5790. Obviously, the C579R is a more heavy duty, more business-like. As you can see there, I've took the cover off, and now what I'm planning to do at this point is undo the clips, the earthing strap, if you like, which just clips off, and the little miner that protects the wiring loom there for the whole scanner assembly. You can see I'm tracing it back there and unplugging everything. You need to do this, you need to take it off, because the whole scanner and the document feeder needs to come off. It's not an easy job, this, to be honest. I don't wish this. It's probably one of the most difficult jobs to do on this model. See, I'm taking the top cover that houses the rear bypass assembly. Take that off, and then there's two screws at the top that holds the whole scanner unit in. It's on hinges, and it's best to do this while it's actually sitting down and placed down at the moment. The whole thing just lifts off. Nice and easy. Now the hinges that basically house the whole scanner needs to come off. It's just one screw on either side, they just pop off. I think it's one screw. Doing this from memory, by the way. Yeah. Now the brackets that house the hinges also need to come off, because the whole bypass needs to come out at the back. So I think it's a couple of screws. I think maybe the other side has 3, this side has 2, I think. So they must come off, because they screw into the side of the whole bypass, and they screw into the whole frame at the bottom underneath as well. Here we are, one off. They're both the same, so it doesn't matter which way around you put them back. It's they can go on either side. And I think this side's got one extra screw. Now I'm actually taking the screws out to remove the whole bypass assembly. there is a wire that goes in there. I was just checking to see if it was actually become free. You can see I'm tracing the part of the wiring loom now and just unclipping it. Now, it's always a good idea when you're stripping things down, especially not when you're too familiar with things, is take lots of pictures. See I'm undoing the actual connectors. Just tracing them back. That pops off. Now I'm having to take this whole guide off the top there as well. I'm pointing the screw with my finger as if that's helping, but there you go. Just undo take a few screws off and then just undo the cable in. Now what we need to do now is, obviously that was an FFC cable just removed. It's you be gentle with those. They can easily get damaged. I'm actually it's held down with double-sided sticky tape. I'm actually just removing that out the way because it actually rests on the rail, and that whole rail holds the print head carriage assembly, so that is actually has to come out. That's what we're aiming for. But at this time I'm taking the paper feed out, the upper paper feed. So there's a few screws, there's a couple of wiring looms in there as well. There's a bracket, it's like an earthing plate that needs to be taken off as well. You can see the right hand side where my finger is at the moment, but I'm just undoing the cabling. It's kind of held down just with clips. Just give me a bit more place so I can just move it out the way. Right, so next we've got to get the main PCB board out, the main board. So yeah, bunch of screws, bunch of connectors, FFC cables. Take your time, take plenty of images, because it's quite compact. The problem is with A4 machines is that they have to compact everything into a smaller footprint to make everything, to make space for everything to fit in. So everything's compacted and it's more difficult to take apart. So, you know, this is like this on every A4 box really. Just take your time, take your screws out, wiggle it, see if it's coming loose. And the only thing I'd like to say really, just as a matter of interest, is watch that encoder. That encoder is that white kind of clear disc that my head's in the way of at the moment. But it's just below the screwdriver, that big disc. Yeah, just got to be careful with that because the main board tucks behind there. As you can see, I'm just searching out the screws, having a feel as I go just to see if things are loosening off. Once we get this board out, you know, we move on to the actual carriage rail next. So we're getting there. See, I'm just carefully checking, see where all of the cables go to and where they plug into. Yeah. So there is FFC cables actually tucked on the other side of that board as well. Yeah, that connector was a bit difficult for me there, but we got there in the end. I think the important thing is make sure that you, when you pull the cables out, that you move them out the way, because when you put the board back, you want to make sure you don't trap the cables. There was the FFC cable there as well, that's double-sided sticky tape to the other side of the board. We're getting there. I know I've said that twice already or so. That's me just double checking now. Make sure I haven't missed anything. The thing is, we don't need to completely take it off, so I never took all of the FFC cables off. So it was enough to move it out the way so I could get to the rail. There we go. We're just moving there. There's a bracket there on the left hand side. I'm just removing a couple of screws there, and that bracket just lifts off. Just kind of remember there that keep all the screws together. So when you take an item off, the screws that you took off to get the item off, just keep them with it together. There's not many different types of screws for the Epsons. You basically get the ones that go into plastic, and then you get the ones that go into metal. That's the most common two, and they're so easy to see the difference between them. And you can see from my phone there, I have been taking a lot of pictures. As I say, I mentioned this is the first time I've actually had to do this job. Now, I'm taking the encoder off. The encoder is basically the part that the machine knows where the carriage is. So there's a sensor on the back of the carriage. The carriage is that big black square thing there. And the encoder runs through a sensor on the back. You can see I've just removed it. Now, it's very important that you keep that clean, and it's also very important that you don't kink it. And it's also connected by a tension spring, which is very difficult to get back on again. But we'll worry about that in a little while. As you can see, we're making progress here. I'm ready, just about ready now to take the carriage from the outer frame that houses the carriage. Now, when you get the part you can get it with the carriage assembly with the belt, or you can get it with the metal frame, which I'm holding now, with the carriage. Now, you can't buy the carriage belt separately. However, I physically only fitted the carriage belt, and here I am with the replacement carriage belt. Now, I took that off another carriage, okay, because if you replace the carriage and the carriage belt as it comes with the part, you have to remove the print head from the carriage assembly. And when you refit the print head to the new carriage, you have to realign the print head, which is not an easy task. So basically, I just replaced the carriage belt there. It's two screws, two little brackets that hold it, and the belt is there is a certain position of the belt that you must fit to, but it is obvious because the belt is actually woven a different way, specifically for where you fit it to the carriage. You can just see I'm just tightening up the screws and replacing the carriage. Hey, you notice that I put a cloth underneath there, and that is purely to protect the print head. The print head is very delicate, easily damaged, and I'm wearing gloves, obviously, that if I touch the bottom of the print head, less chance of damage it if I accidentally touch the bottom of the print head. But also is because the cloth's there, it's not getting scratched on any of the components that sit underneath the print head. Now you can see now I'm ready to refit the carriage. Now the belt has to be positioned a specific way for it. And it's a bit fiddly to get back on. Probably what's more fiddly is to fit the encoder, to be fair. And you can see I've got it on the side, the printhead's on the bottom. You can see that to the right of the printhead, the carriage at the bottom. You can see the printhead. I am trying to protect it from even being on the cloth for too much. Now, the worrying thing was when I was rebuilding this, was the machine was broken. The carriage belt has snapped for about a few days before we actually got the opportunity to get hold of the part for it. Now, I'm not sure what happened. It wasn't me that was on site for the initial call. However, the belt had snapped and the printhead will not have been sitting on its cap. The cap is the bit that protects the printhead from drying out, basically, and stops dust resting on it and that type of thing. Now, because it's been out with the elements, if you like, just with air around it, I was a bit concerned about the quality of the print by the time I got this together. And this was in the back of my mind when I was rebuilding this. Now, I'm putting the pulley back on here. This is basically houses the carriage belt. Now, once I got this on, it clips in, and then you spin it around the other side, and you reattach the spring, and that keeps the tension. It auto-tensions the belt, so you don't have to ever worry about retensioning it or anything like that. I was just making sure that basically the carriage is on correctly, the belt's positioned as it should be, and you can see now where the pulley's gone through. And I'm refitting the spring. That's just me checking for movement. Make sure it's all free, as it should be. Now there's the carriage upside down. I'm refitting the sensor I took off. Now, I'll be honest, I took an extra screw out I shouldn't have taken out, and that extra screw actually houses that sensor. That sensor, if you like, is like a registration sensor. It detects the lead edge of the paper before it goes under the carriage, as in under the print head. And it detects the paper's going through, so it's ready to print, basically, onto the paper. I've had a few issues with that sensor, where people have had a jam and removed the jam, and that sensor's actuated like a plastic arm that moves both ways. It's spring-loaded with 2 springs, and it gets stuck. And I've been lucky so far that I just use a spring hook to reposition it. But I've heard that you can damage it and replace it, and you can imagine how far you have to go in to replace that sensor. As you can see there, I'm just refitting it back in. Just double checking I've got it correctly set. Kicking the stand that holds the camera at the same time. Okay, I've actually taken this spring back off and this pulley back off because the screw pops in, and obviously I've missed that. Probably cursing a lot at the time. I was feeling a bit naff at the time, so I was probably being hard on myself there. Just putting all the screws back in. And it's basically just rebuilding it now. Carriage back on, main board back on, paper feed back on, all the wiring, all the clips, all the FFC cables, all the connectors. And then obviously it's important to go over all your work, make sure that you've done everything correctly, because the last thing you want to do is when you put the covers back on is you realise you've missed something. That's me just pulling the actual drive belt back through again. So the motor's at the back there, and then pulley's on that side that I'm reconnecting now with the spring. Probably one of the easiest jobs to do is refit that. Double check your work. More screws. There's that bracket. Just popping that back on. Now, this is the encoder I mentioned earlier, and I sprayed glass cleaner onto the cloth, and I'm giving it a wipe. Now, basically, the minute you start working on a machine, you get your hands in, you can get your grease off your fingers on there, and off. If you're removing a jam, you can get grease on your fingers from the rail, and you can spread that onto the encoder. And sometimes I've come across where the machine will have printing issues and maybe even come up with a jam. It may make a noise, bang. The carriage may bang to the side, or possibly when you're printing a document, the quality is not quite right, as if it cuts off a part of the image. This is quite difficult. This is a small little spring. When I look back at it, I'm not even sure if I really needed to remove that encoder. But then again, yeah, I must have had to remove the encoder because I needed the carriage off the rail. So I remember putting this back on. It was quite difficult. It's a bit fiddly. As I mentioned to you, you can buy the carriage with the belt, but I believe you can buy the carriage, the belt, and the metal rail, which maybe come with the motor, as well as the encoder. I haven't double checked the parts guide for that. But at the end of the day, I'd still just replace the belt so I'll just order the carriage belt with the carriage, just to save the alignment issues that you may have. You can see there I've gone over the encoder again. Just gone over with a little bit of glass cleaner on the cloth and just pinch either side of it. Be very careful, it's delicate. So with some isopropanol, I'm just cleaning the rail, just in front of the rail like a guide, basically. The printer head moves up and down there and has a kind of a sensor that looks from underneath the print head where the paper's fed through, so it's good to keep that clean. If the ink's dried up and it's been there for some time, it can be a bit stubborn to remove. Isopropanol normally does the trick, IPA. So here comes the fun bit. I'm fitting the main PCB board back in. I'm being very careful not to catch that encoder disc. And I'm making sure I take my time with it, make sure it sits as it should do, make sure I don't trap any cables underneath. And start fitting the FFC cables, screws, connectors. I took my time with it, to be fair, and I've sped the video up accordingly for this. Right, I'm just making sure I route the cables correctly and tidy them all up a little bit. Make sure they don't get trapped by anything, sharp edges or the metal frame as such, or the covers when I put the covers back on. You can see the FFC cable going back in there. Now this is the sheet feed at the top. I'm just routing this. Now when I originally put this in, I actually routed the cable incorrectly. I had to realign it all back up. But it only goes in one way, and I noticed it when I routed the cable. There's all the earth strap there, all the screws. The FFC cable that goes across the top of the carriage assembly. That's the guide that holds all of the cables and keeps them safe. Screw that down, it's 2 screws. So I'm just routing the cable there. The bypass then goes on next at the back, and you can see the wiring loom that rests on that assembly across the top. Keeps it safe, stops it from getting trapped. There's the hinges going on. And then the scanner, being careful not to trap the cables. So you can put the screws in for those to hold them in place. I did it flat down, which is important. The hinges are flat, you see. That's how we lifted it off. Just tidying up the wiring loom, earthing strap, connectors. Right, okay, I'm actually cheating the sensor there for the cover with a bit of insulation tape, and I'm firing it up for the first time, and I'm doing a nozzle check. It comes out blank, but I'm not overly too concerned at this point, so I carried out a couple of cleans on it to see if I can actually improve it. So a few minutes later, I've rattled off a few, 2 cleans I think it was. And we brought back mostly the quality. It's missing quite a bit on the black, but I wasn't really that worried about it at this point. So I took the opportunity to switch the machine off and finish putting it back together. Now, when you do cleans, you can't really do more than 3 cleans really in 24 hours. It's never advised to do more than 3 cleans. And also when you do a clean, you do a nozzle check in between each one. And also leave it a few minutes between cleans just to make sure you don't damage the print head really. So I put it back together, left it 24 hours, returned it back to the customer, ran another couple of cleans, and the machine was fine. So happy days. Hopefully I won't do another one of those too soon. Thanks for watching.